What's up, everybody? Welcome to the 100 Fantasy Football channel. If we are meeting for the first time, my name is Ivan Herrera, and the purpose of this channel is to not only give you advice so you can be successful in fantasy football, but it's for us to connect and be able to build this community up even more. This is a community that is very passionate, that is infatuated with fantasy football, and I'm looking to just make it more so connected so that way we can continue to build off the amazing community that we have here. So once again, welcome. My name is Ivan. I'm so excited for what we have in store for you this weekend as we go over all the week 5 matchups as well as some of the players that I love. But before we go any further, of course, it'd mean a lot to me if you hit that like button. Be sure to just help me out with that by clicking that like button as a highly appreciate that. And of course, if you aren't already, be sure to subscribe so that way whenever I drop a video you can be notified, and whenever I go live you also get the same notification as well. But be sure to also hit that notification button so that way you never miss miss a live stream, miss an upload, whatever it is. But regardless, I'm really excited to have you guys here. So really quick, here's the show breakdown of what to expect for today. We're going to be going over all of the injuries that are going to be taking place, unfortunately, going into week 5, some things that you can do to counter some of those injuries. We're also going to go over the players in week 5 that you should start, players that I love with their matchups and what they're bringing to the table so far. And then we're going to go over, of course, as always, a bold prediction that I have going into week 5. And then we're going to go over with one of my segments that I absolutely love going into, which is cap or no cap, and then we're going to close it off with a Q&A if anyone has any questions. But for that, let's go ahead and get into the first part. We're going to be going over the injuries that we have right now going into week 5. And in week 5 right now, we have so far Calvin Ridley has been ruled out for the Atlanta Falcons, so he will not be making the flight over to London when the Falcons go and face the New York Jets. So expect a big game from Kyle Pitts. This is the week that I believe he will break out. If this is not the week, considering that the matchup is a juicy one, we can start to hit the panic button, considering that he thankfully has had the opportunities, he's run the routes, the volume has been there as far as the playing time. Now it's just a matter for him to actually produce, and I'm really pulling for this kid to do so in week 5. So with Calvin Ridley out, expect Kyle Pitts to have a huge game. Another injury that, of course, we heard about earlier last week was David Montgomery. After having a big game on Sunday, he unfortunately went out with a sprained knee, and he's expected to be out anywhere between 4 to 5 weeks. So Damien Harris will be filling in for him, and I expect Damien Harris to still get the volume and hopefully produce. I mean, he's a solid player. He had a great career over in Kansas City, and I think that he's going to fill in for David Montgomery. Maybe not at the same effectiveness, but enough to be able to be viable for fantasy football. So expect David Montgomery to not necessarily be missed, but if you have Damien Williams, he should get the volume. Here, I pulled up this stat actually. At the end of the game, that Damien Williams, after he took over, he got 100% of the touches, and in his career, when he's had 15 plus touches or more, he's averaged 24 fantasy points per game. That's a sample size of 9 games, so I believe that Damien Williams has the talent to fill in for David Montgomery and to bring fantasy football production. Now, of course, the big news, Christian McCaffrey, who was ruled to be out for a couple weeks, is now questionable. So Chuba Hubbard saw 75% of all the touches that running backs in Carolina had last week. If he, in fact, is ruled out, Christian McCaffrey, expect Hubbard to still get all that volume. And, of course, in fantasy football, one of the biggest things that really will get you successful is getting a player that has a lot of volume and, of course, has skill. And that's what Chuba Hubbard has with the volume and, of course, with the talent that he has as well. And then we also have Joe Mixon, who is also questionable. He was injured late in that Thursday night football game in week 4. We haven't heard much of him participating as a full participant in practice. He has been limited. He is currently ruled as questionable. And a lot of talks are that Samaje Perine would be the running back that you would want to own. considering that he is the handcuff if you have Joe Mixon as your number one RB or one of your RBs on your teams. And from there, we also have A.J. Brown, who was ruled out in week 4. He's looking to actually bounce back and be available for week 5. He has been practicing in multiple days this week. Unfortunately, Julio Jones, his counterpart, has not seen that same kind of success in his recovery, and we're expecting him to be out for week 5. So I expect a big game for A.J. Brown going into week 5. And news today that was pretty big, we saw Logan Thomas as well as George Kittle, both elite tight ends in their own, of course, respect, right? But they're both going to be out for their teams in week 5, and both were placed on the IR. So expect them to be out for a minimum of 3 games. So those are the notable injuries for week 5. There, of course, there's plenty more. Be sure to follow me on Instagram at IvanH____, and you are always more than welcome to follow our homepage, which is at 100 Fantasy FB, where I post all the updates that we have going into the matchups, of course, any huge injuries. And with that, let's go ahead and get into the players that I love in week number 5. And the first one is going to be Jameis Winston. I believe that Jameis Winston is going to have a bounce back game after his explosion in week 1. We haven't seen him really get anywhere near to that kind of production, though we have seen him having better decision making. I believe that he'll have a bounce back game versus the Washington football team, because unfortunately this isn't the defense that we thought we were going to have this season. They haven't really been terrorizing teams like they did last year, and I believe that Jameis Winston has an opportunity to not only bounce back, but bounce back in a big way. Last week, the Washington football team gave up 4 touchdowns to the Atlanta Falcons, and I believe that the Saints, because they have a better defense than the Falcons, will have a wonderful opportunity for Jameis Winston to put up a big game. Last week, we saw that Winston, he hasn't scored. So here's the stat I have. Winston hasn't scored over 14 fantasy points since week number 1, and I believe that this week is the week that he'll not only break 14, but eclipse it by so much. So expect the big game for Jameis Winston versus the Washington football team. The next one we have, and it's Corey Davis. And actually, you know what? This is going to bug me, so let me just fix this really quick. My OCD is going to start kicking in right now. So let me go my video capture. No one's here anyways watching this, so who cares, right? Let me see. Video capture. There we go. That was going to bug me. So I'll start from the top because I want to make sure this is clean. So Corey Davis, I expect him to have a big week in week 5. He has had 5 or more targets every game this season, and as I alluded to earlier, volume is king in fantasy, and in this case, with Corey Davis being the elite target for Zach Wilson, I believe that this will continue. The matchup is great versus the Falcons. They've given up the 7th most fantasy points to wide receivers this season. Remember, last year they were actually the worst. That defense still continues to struggle versus defending elite wide receivers, and I think that though I don't think Corey Davis is an elite wide receiver, he is a more than capable one, and I believe that because of that, with the volume and with the matchup, Corey Davis will have a big game in week number 5 versus the Atlanta Falcons. Next one, if you have been on the fence, I'm going to go with Chase Edmonds, and let me fix this too. I'm so sorry. All this should have been done beforehand, but life. There we go. Here we go. Chase Edmonds. Chase Edmonds has been absolutely phenomenal. Full transparency, I drafted Trey Sermon before drafting Chase Edmonds, and I regret it. And I love the fact that Chase Edmonds has been highly utilized, not only in the passing game, which of course we knew because of the talent that he has as a receiving running back, but he's also getting the opportunities with the rushing attempts. Look, I have this stat here. He's had double-digit touches in every game this season, and the last 3 weeks he has had 5 or more targets through the air. And that's just phenomenal things that you want to see out of a running back on your fantasy football team because of the opportunities that he has to get you more points. And going up against San Francisco, they've allowed the 9th most receptions to the fantasy football running backs, and they were also have given up the 10th most fantasy points to running backs. And I believe that those are 2 wonderful things that work in favor for Chase Edmonds. So I expect Chase Edmonds to feast off of that opportunity and to bring you big production in week 5 versus the San Francisco 49ers. And my last must-start player for week number 5 is going to be Dalton. Whoa, I messed this up. Let me fix this. I'm so sorry. There we go. We're all set. So let me fix, there we go. Now, the last player I have as someone that I'm really looking forward to start on my lineups is going to be tight end for the Cowboys, Dalton Schultz. Dalton Schultz, 3 of 4 games this season, has had 6 or more targets, which have led to him having double-digit production. Hold on, I'm going to say that all over again. Cut. So here you go. In 3 of 4 games this season, he has had 6 or more targets, and in those 3 games, he has had double-digit points in all those games. The Giants have also given up the fourth most points to the tight end this season, and because of that, I expect Dalton Schultz to capitalize on that matchup and bring you big production. I love the offense there in Dallas, even though I'm a Philadelphia Eagles fan, and I think that Dalton Schultz has been a bolt of lightning in fantasy, considering that he was drafted really, really late, and there are times where even myself, I own Robert Tonyan, and I wish I would have gone with Dalton Schultz instead because of the opportunities that he's seeing and the target share that he has there in Dallas. And that does it for the players that I love going into week 5. And now let's go ahead and get into one of my favorite segments, and that is Cap or No Cap. So here's the thing. When it comes to fantasy football, there's always a lot of questions of if this player is productive on the field, does that always translate to fantasy football success? And that isn't always the case. And however, sometimes players don't perform really well on the football field and as far as the, just the box score, but they end up being fantasy football rock stars. And that's the subject of today's Cap or No Cap. And that is Jalen Hurts. Does his production in real life football matter? And it doesn't. So that's why his production, that's a no cap for me. So Jalen Hurts, whether he plays well or if he doesn't, every single week he has the opportunity to provide fantasy football success for you. And it's because of the upside that he provides with his rushing ability. Check this stat out. In the games that he's played, and so far in every game this season, he's put up 20 points or more in fantasy football. And in those 2 games where he really struggled, and that was in week 2 and of course in week 3, he still put up 20 points. And in a game versus the Dallas Cowboys where the team didn't look anywhere near like they did in week 1, they looked really flat. Jalen Hurts made some very questionable plays. He still got you 20 plus fantasy points in that matchup. And that's the thing that I'm trying to drive home right now, is that whether or not Jalen Hurts does well on the football field, he's going to always provide production for you in fantasy. And that's why it's easy for me to say that Jalen Hurts is an easy matchup-proof quarterback rest of season in 2021. So with that, let's go ahead and go into my bold prediction for the week. And we're going to actually wrap this up pretty quick today, which is pretty awesome because I am getting hungry. Had a long day, had a photo shoot today. So let's go ahead and get into bold predictions.
It's a bold strategy, Todd. Let's see if it pays off for him.
My bold prediction for week number 5 of the 2021 season revolves around Latavius Murray. For those of you that don't know Latavius Murray, he has been a journeyman the last couple of seasons. He started off his career in Oakland with the Raiders, who are now Las Vegas, and from there he went to Minnesota. Then he had a good stint over with New Orleans behind Alvin Kamara, and he's continued to show his success. Even though he hasn't been explosive this season, he is now getting more and more volume there in Baltimore. And that's why he is the centerpiece of this week's bold prediction. I believe that Latavius Murray, showing that he was able to handle the volume last week versus a very tough Denver Broncos defense. He had 18 rushes, he had about 58 yards and had a touchdown, which is pretty solid, which is a pretty solid outing for, any player in fantasy football. And I get it that this upcoming week they're playing the Indianapolis Colts, who are a much better defense than that of Denver. They actually right now are a top 8 defense. They don't really give up too many points to the fantasy running backs, but I believe that because of the volume that Latavius Murray is going to get, he is going to have a wonderful game versus the Colts. And here's my prediction, because volume leads to production in fantasy football, and because of that, I believe he is going to have a productive day. I see him getting 16 carries for 88 yards and a touchdown for week number 5 as the Baltimore Ravens face the Indianapolis Colts. And let me go here. Final thing here. So a lot of you have asked how I'm doing in fantasy football, and I'm going to be transparent with you. I've had a pretty good season in 7 leagues right now. Currently 4-0 in one of them, 3-1 in 2. I'm 2-2 in one. I'm 1-3 in the other. And I have a best ball league as well, and that one I haven't really checked on too much because I drafted that one in July. But the point is, right now we're winding into we've already got like about 25% of the season already through. So with that, I just wanted to say thank you so much for those of you that were on here. Really does mean a lot to me. And that I was going to do a Q&A, but you know, I have to wrap this up, so I'm going to go ahead and go for now. But if you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you. And of course, as always, I encourage you to hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe. I'm going to do that part all over again. I didn't really like it. If you made it to the end of this video, thank you so much for making it. I really do appreciate you guys tuning on. I encourage you, hit that like button. Be sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell so that way you are notified every time